Every single Tuesday of this month. And lucky for us, there are 5 Tuesdays in April. And so I am really, really excited to see you all, hopefully as many of these Tuesdays at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time every day of this month. So, for those of you that don't know me, I am a San Francisco-based fashion, portrait, and commercial photographer. I grew up splitting my time between the tropics of Florida and very vibrant Italy. I'm half Italian, and so I'm really attracted to things like monochromatic spaces, well-defined shadows, obviously very influenced by the sun from both of these spaces, and also, my world is completely ruled by color. And so I'm really, really, really excited to be here with you all today. Hello to everyone in the chat. I would love to see where you all are calling in from. So just drop that in the chat. I have my separate monitor over here where I can just keep up with what you all are saying this whole time. So let me know where you're calling in from, and we can then go ahead and get started. So in the meantime, I hope that everyone has their starter file ready to go, and you can either follow along and do this at the exact same time as me, or, if you just want to watch and, basically follow along and try to do this part later, you can do that as well. But if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to ask. I am definitely one of those people that absolutely learns through doing. And sometimes I can get a little bit stuck on something. And until I've figured out how to work past that, I don't necessarily, I feel like I can't always move on as quickly. And so truly, if anyone has any questions, please drop it in the chat here. You can also find the starter file in the chat as well. And we'll go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to share my screen with you all, and you can take a look here. We will be working with this image that is, I've already dragged it into Photoshop, and it has automatically opened into Adobe Camera Raw. Now, I am someone that typically makes my color corrections in Lightroom, but it really is a wonderful exercise to realize how much you can actually do within Photoshop. And sometimes I forget that I actually have a lot of capabilities within this one program alone. So we're actually going to do a lot of the stuff that I typically would do in Lightroom in Photoshop. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things of the Adobe ecosystem. So as with literally everything that anyone will probably ever show you, as we're sort of moving through workflow within Adobe products, we all know there are 500 million, thousand, bajillion ways to do the exact same thing. No one way, is right. No one way is wrong. It really just is a matter of finding out what works best for you. And so my hope in today's workflow and creative challenge is that maybe you discover something that is either new to you or that feels like something really helpful that you want to integrate into your practice in a slightly different way. And again, please, pop into the chat and ask me any questions along the way. Hello, Apurva. Hello, Keys. So good to be here with you all today. So we're going to start off with this image. I shot this so my friends have this really incredible floral design florist business in LA called Pretend Plants and Flowers. You should definitely check them out if you don't know them already. Very colorful, imaginative, just like beautiful, dreamy, outside of the box work. And they opened up this appointment space in Hollywood last year that was just really, really beautiful. I mean, absolutely breathtaking, incredible space. Half of Pretend is an interior designer. And so, I mean, they just did wonders with this. It was basically an apartment that was turned into a showroom. So I will, I believe, be working with a couple of their images from this shoot throughout the month. So definitely tune in to see a little bit more. But I went in, shot some portraits of one of my friends in there, and then also sort of did this little creative shoot here that was sort of meant to be this like matchy vibe with three different models that, although they look quite different in this image, we actually styled them really similarly in a lot of the photos. So As we go into this, and I'm sort of taking a look at this file, the very first thing that I always like to do is color correct my image. So as we're thinking about toning, again, automatically Adobe Camera Raw is going to open up, and I'm just going to bump up the exposure a little bit here. So as I'm increasing the exposure, one thing that I immediately notice, and I'm curious if anyone else like sort of clocked this too, is that as we're looking at the models, there's actually like a really big window over here. And, you can already tell from here that it's like a really bright sunny day. It was really, really hot and warm. And from this window, we're just getting a ton of like more golden light that's falling onto this model. It does, really make the skin tone look really different than everyone else. And this is, like almost exclusively based on the fact that she's just like really close to this like absolutely warm source of light. So something that I clocked for later is that I might go in there and just make like a couple adjustments to the skin on her body to help it just sort of blend and match a little bit more easily, seamlessly with everyone else's in the frame. So I've increased my exposure. I might like bump up the contrast a little bit because we have some fun colors going on. Typically, I like to bring down my highlights a little bit here just to make sure that we're still getting some information in those brightest parts of our images. Sometimes I play around with the blacks too down here. Excuse me. Absolutely just like inhaled air the craziest way possible. So from there, now that I can breathe again, we are going to bump up our shadows just a smidge. And again, I just sort of like to have a little bit of information in there. So now that we've done just a couple basic color corrections, we can scroll down here. Something that I often like to play with is clarity. Clarity is something that I tend to use less when it comes to people and more when it comes to really wanting to highlight, like texture, and like any kind of like detail in something that isn't usually people or skin. So if, I'm gonna kind of exaggerate it here, but with clarity, when we add a bunch of it with people, we just get a little too much like excess detail in the skin. It kind of brings in like a little bit of like harshness that I don't really love. And so I bring this up because even though I'm not going to be using clarity just in my overall color adjustments for this image, it is something that I like to play with. And so it's kind of something that I'll clock sometimes and be like, oh, like what would it look like if I had a little bit of clarity? We're not doing that here, but just something to consider. So then when we scroll down, we are down to our color mixer. Now, our color mixer is one of my absolute most favorite things to use within all of my color corrections. As someone that, I mean, obviously really cares about color, you can tell I'm in a room that's painted like the inside of a raspberry. Color is a really huge aspect of our creative workflow and gives us a lot of insight into what it is that we are, what it is that we're creating, how accurately we want to depict colors, or how imaginatively we want to depict those colors. So here within Color Mixer, you're going to have these three spots. So when you click on hue, hue has to do with what kind of color are we working with? So if we're playing with our reds, is it going to be a really cool red drawn all the way to the left? So here you can see the red sort of became like a pinky, like almost purpley cool red. Or is the red going to be a really warm red when we draw our slider all the way to the right? Here, the warm red really translates to this like really gorgeous orange. Saturation, we all know and love or hate saturation, depending on what your style is. So how much do we want to see the red in our image? Do we want to see it a ton and be crazy red, or do we want to not see any red whatsoever? Another fantastic element of our color mixer down here is luminance. So luminance has to do with how bright or how dark the color is going to register in the image. So if we want the red to be quite dark, we are going to drag that slider all the way over to the left. And here you can see the red gets really dark. It almost like changes the hue entirely. It's kind of reading a little bit more brown. Or do we want the red to be really, really bright? And drag it all the way to the right. It almost turns into this like vibrant coral. So as you can see, there's just like so much room to play in here. So for me, as someone that's all about color, loves really playing with our color mixer, what I'm gonna do is start off with luminance over here. I'm noticing that the window is reading pretty blown out, so maybe I want to bring a little bit of that in. So I might decrease the luminance on the green plants just to sort of have it pop in. I kind of want those plants to pop a little bit, so I'm gonna bump up the saturation slightly. And then when it comes to the hue, do I want the plants to be kind of like this, like, ooh, this like yellowy kind of like green, or am I wanting them to be this more tropical green? So I'm kind of feeling like the yellowy vibe personally. So we're going to leave that there. And then when we go to our saturation, I really want the velvet part of these pedestals to pop. So I'm going to bump up the red slightly, but I do want to make sure that they're reading a little bit warm. So I am going to bump up the hue a little bit here. Then when we come over to these flowers, I'm going to just bump up the saturation on the purple and the magenta because I really, really want them to pop. So now, now that we've made sort of like our overall basic color corrections, let's go in and start adjusting for, sort of like the background and this skin tone. So what we're going to do is go over to this right bar over here, and we're going to select our masking tool. So as you can see, we have these fantastic AI masking tools that I personally am obsessed with because it just saves me so much time, and I don't have to go in with my brush and like painstakingly like paint around like each aspect of everything, each individual hair and the sunglasses and the shadow. I can go in and be like, hey babe, can you just select the background for me real quick? And then in literally under 5 seconds, it has seamlessly selected the background for me. So if y'all can remember, this background color, here, I'll just remove the overlay real quick, is kind of like this really awesome lime wash pink. But I'm noticing that in the photo, we're like losing a little bit of the color there that was actually present in real life. So what I'm going to do is just add in some magenta through the tint. And what I like about this is that because I left all of this selected too, it's also adding in a little bit of magenta to the flowers, the pedestals. I kind of like that. So once I feel like that is in a really good place, and obviously, I can be like crazy with it and make it super, super, super purple, or, go in the opposite direction and add a bunch of green. But I really just kind of want it to be this like gorgeous pink hue. If I want to warm it up slightly, I can just increase the temperature just a little bit. But I'm feeling like that is a really great place to start. So the next thing that I'm going to do is select my mask tool again. And from here, I am actually going to create a new mask. And this time I'm going to select people. So as you can see, it's already identified each of these individual folks already. So I'm going to select the person that is closest to that window. Once I select her, we have these really handy dandy individual separate masking features. What I'm going to do is select the body skin and the facial skin. But I want to make sure that I'm creating two separate masks, because if we look at this, the facial skin and the body skin like might not necessarily be reading exactly the same. Down here is like a little bit darker than her face. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that I'm creating two separate masks. Once I've created them, you see that they're automatically labeled, which is fantastic, because sometimes when we're just looking at like this one section of the mask, we're like, wait, what? What am I looking at? What section is that? So we have body skin selected, and what I was noticing was that it was reading really warm. So I'm just going to cool it down ever so slightly to just try to compensate for, the window that was really close to her. So I bump it down a little bit, trying to not make it look super fake. That's like kind of always my overall thing. And then I'm going to go in and do the exact same thing with the other people, because I don't necessarily need to match her to the two of them. We just kind of want to find a happy middle ground. So now I can go in and sort of do the exact same thing with them. I feel like their facial skin and their body skin are reading similarly, so I don't need to create two separate masks. I can just have it read as one. And I'm just gonna go in and warm them up slightly to try to match our person on the right. So here, I'm gonna do the exact same thing with our wonderful person in the middle, facial body skin. I'm not creating two separate masks because I'm just sort of blazing through this section. And I'm just gonna warm the skin tone up a little bit. And that to me is already feeling so much better. So if we look at the before versus the after, there's a night and day difference in terms of sort of trying to even out the skin tone amongst each of them. So now something that I'm noticing is that I really wanted this person's lipstick to sort of like be in line with these darker shades. So what I'm going to do is create another mask, select people, find this cutie again. This time I'm going to select lips. Once I create that mask, I'm going to go in here, and because the lips were reading sort of like this neutral, almost like really like light tone, what I'm going to do is add in magenta to make them a little bit more pink. And then rather than having it be like a really cool pink, I want to warm it up slightly. So I'm going to add in a little bit of warmth, but then I'm going to decrease the exposure to get kind of like a nicer red hue. And as you can see, we're already getting closer to the lipstick colors that we're seeing in the other models here. So once I feel like that is in a good place, I'm going to zoom in so that you all can see this because it just is so seamless, right? Like it literally looks like she was already wearing that lip color to begin with. So now that we are, working with a more even skin tone and also with this like really great lip color, and we've color corrected our image, I'm going to open it in Photoshop. From here, I am going to use generative fill to just make some overall tweaks to the image that I really like. So let's see, it looks like my screen stopped sharing, so I'm going to share it again. Let me know if you all can see this. All right. Let's see. All right, so we're jumping back in here. So now that we've opened up the image in Photoshop, what we're going to do is come over here and we're going to use our spot healing brush. And at first, we all know if we use our brackets, the one on the right makes it the brush bigger, on the left makes it smaller. I'm just going to go in here and lightly brush just to get rid of that one random spot. The other things that are kind of bothering me here are this section. There was a mirror over here that was reflecting the strobes and kind of creating this like, bigger highlight over here that I didn't really love. And then I'm also feeling like this is a little distracting. And now that I'm taking a closer look at the window, I'm like, you know what, it's just too blown out. I actually want to like leave some nice room in case, these florists maybe want to use this for text over here. So what I am going to do is just start to remove certain things with generative fill. So I'm going to select my patch tool and then just do a really basic outline of the mirror. And then I'm just going to use generative fill to just poof, make it go away and immediately replace it with whatever like perfect background generative fill tends to come up with for me. So it's this really quick and easy way of getting rid of something. I can then scroll through my variations, find kind of like the perfect seamless lime wash. I am feeling this first one. And then we're going to do the same thing with the window. So for the window, I'm going to select my rectangular marquee tool. We're going to come over here and get rid of this as well. We're just sort of trying to create like a nice clean space around the subjects that bring the focus in to them without distracting us from all of the other stuff. So that is also looking absolutely incredible. I kind of like this because I feel like this is like a little bit of a more natural shadow that we can also get rid of more seamlessly if we want to down the line. So now I'm going to come back to my patch tool. And sometimes, what I notice is that the patch tool can be really great for removing like little kind of like light skin imperfections. Oh, got to make sure I'm working on the background. Little light skin imperfections here that I don't love that just really seamlessly remove them. I didn't create a new layer for this because I just know that it's something really quick and easy that I like, that I don't ever really come back and change. So now what I might do is, get rid of like some of those spots. And then if I want to come over here and get rid of this kind of funky shadow, I'm not selecting the whole area. I'm actually just working with this space. So similarly here to what we've been doing, you can just generative fill to see if it really seamlessly, integrates this harsher line into the natural part of your background environment. And it actually did a really great job here. So if we don't feel like it's absolutely perfect, we can go in and make some adjustments. Something that I hear people say a lot is that they'll try to gen fill over an area that they have already generative filled. And what you need to do if you are trying to make, another adjustment over an area that you've already generative filled is that you actually just need to flatten the image. So again, I'm doing this because I'm actually not trying to retain those layers. I already like the way that looks. I don't think I'm going to come back to this image and make additional corrections. And now you can go in here and you can either just do kind of like your classic patch tool if you want to do that, or you can, go in and use generative fill again. So now we have this like really clean background already. Kind of might zoom in over here and say, like, I know that these made sense in the context of the space, but like, I'm not super loving them for this image. I'd like to replace it with something else. I might come in here and just really lightly outline and then try to think of like some other like fun thing that I want to add into the space. So maybe let's say like, I don't know, leafy green plant. Let's see what it gives us. We never know, right? Like with generative fill, it could be something crazy or it could be something perfect. When I was doing a test image of this the other day, it actually gave me a huge spider, and I was really hoping that it would do that here with you all. So let's just zoom out so we can sort of see this within the context of what we're looking at. So we have these like various options here. I like this plant, but I actually think that like this really fits the environment. But I don't know. What are you all thinking? Should we try generating one more time to see if we get something that's slightly more interesting? That's the beauty of generative fill, right? You get to sort of play around with these various options. Okay, so that is like a mega crazy plant that honestly looks really cool. Ooh, I like how kind of like weird and ethereal that is, and how it looks like it's growing out of the pedestal itself. So I kind of like this. I'm noticing that it's just reading a little bit fake. So what I might do is just decrease the opacity a little bit here, not because I'm actually trying to make it transparent, but because that's just a really quick and easy way of helping it just blend a little bit better into your environment, right? It like decreases the saturation naturally a little bit, and just helps it integrate a little bit more seamlessly into the background. So as one final thing that we might want to do here before we leave this image is that we might say like, oh, like, let's like really bring out the abs in our models. And so what we're going to do, if we head back to my screen, is we're going to, if you're on a Mac, you're going to click Control L on the background, of course, and we're going to wrap up here. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to drag this slider a tiny bit to the right, not too much, but we are just trying to darken the image overall. So I'm going to put my history brush in the levels, but then I'm going to work on the master opacity change level here. And now we're going to go to our history brush. Now what we're doing is we're simply just brushing in these darker, more accentuated lines to sort of like bring out the abs in our models, kind of like highlighting the lines. I mean, honestly, not that they need it at all because they're literally perfect, but you never know. You might be working on some kind of like sports shoot where you really want to like emphasize, someone's, the definition on someone's arms. So these are just simple ways of doing that. So I'll show you the before and the after. And as you can see, we've just really cleaned up the space and created more room on top to have it be clean. Maybe the client wants to add some text, but we have used our Adobe Camera Raw to overall make color corrections and tone our image. We used AI masking to really help us hone in on those certain areas that we wanted to focus on. And then we used generative fill to just remove distractions and overall elevate the image to fit our vision a little bit better. So that concludes our creative challenge for today. I would love for you to join me next Tuesday, same time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. And thank you so much, everyone. See you soon. No problem. Thank you so, so much. Of course, I saw your email about meeting at noon, like at the last second. So sorry about that, but glad it all worked out. Appreciate all your help. Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely have that looked at. When it was at 2%.